All right. Welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Currently, we don't have a quorum, so we're gonna not be able to approve the agenda or the April meeting minutes yet. So if we end up with a quorum, we'll do it then. Or at some point. We can't. Just a reminder for those of you that may not know, in this particular commission, it's not a majority is the quorum, it's 7. It has to be a specific number, which is not always the case for different committees and commissions. And with that, Laura, would you like to do the land acknowledgement?
Sure. For this month, I'm sharing a festival, which I have never been to, but it looked cool. It's called the World Beat Festival. It's 2 days plus Friday night, June 28th and 29th in Salem. And this is they're celebrating Turtle Island, so indigenous people from North and South America. And there's gonna be a lot of dances and music and food and traditions. And it looked like a really big event, and I've never been to it or heard about it before, so. Sure.
No, it's not quite. Yes, quorum.
We have quorum.
All right. Thank you, Lily. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
We're doubly glad.
yes, we're very happy to see you.
I do have to leave exactly at 7 today.
That's fine. You're here now.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
He's about to join online. He just texted me.
Oh, Alexia's,
So
okay.
we should be good.
All right, Mitra is not here today, but she is on tap for next month's land acknowledgement. And I don't think we can do July because we don't know who's gonna be here.
There's no meeting in July and August.
In July, right, so there is,
So June is Mitra.
so June is Mitra, but I'm saying there's no reason to set up anything tonight for land acknowledgements in
No.
August or whenever is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think so, just, that's why we're not doing it. Okay, public comment. Oh, no, you didn't read I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Oh.
you didn't do the action item and you didn't do the housekeeping.
Oh,
Apologize.
So thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this hybrid meeting format. Just a quick housekeeping note before we begin. For the members of the public who are joining the meeting via computer device or phone, please be advised that you are automatically muted when you enter the meeting. Commissioners who are joining online, you are able to mute or unmute your video at your own discretion, but please mute yourself when not speaking. If you wish to participate during the public comment portion of the meeting and haven't already done so, please raise your virtual hand now to join the speaker's queue. We will lower hands as speakers are called upon. When the public comment begins, we will announce your name and unmute your microphone. You have 2 minutes to speak, after which your microphone will be muted. Regarding chat and Q&A, please note that attendees cannot use these features, so commissioners, please do not use the chat for any purpose other than technological assistance. Lastly, this meeting is being recorded. Recordings will be posted to the Sustainability Commission website. As always, please feel free to contact the Sustainability Commission if there's testimony you were not able to provide or wish to get to us in a different format. And with that, I turn the meeting back over to Chair Devin Mann.
Thank you. Okay, so action item, we have hopefully reviewed and approved the agenda for tonight and the April meeting minutes.
I move to approve them.
Second.
All in favor?
One comment,
Oh.
one note, just spelling of my name.
Oh.
Just, was it Gratial?
Yeah.
Yeah, was it once or?
It was just one.
Yeah, I caught it all the other
I didn't realize
times.
you changed content, but
No, yeah, okay, I must have missed that once because it happened a few times, but
Sorry.
I will make the change.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, now public comment. You have any public comment? No?
Let's see online, because there's 2 people. Doesn't look like anyone online has raised their hand to speak.
And there's Alexis, so we got
There's
the
Alexis,
commissioner,
yep.
you need to bring him over.
He's here, he's good.
Hi there.
The panelist.
Yes.
Okay, so.
If you
Doesn't
can
look
hear me, I'm a panelist.
like-
All right. Yes. All right. I guess that we can move right along then to the presentation.
Great,
Do you
so,
wanna-
Come on up.
All right.
I will introduce Brandon Melton from LTD. Brandon is here tonight to talk about a recent review that LTD did of their entire system. They have, he'll be talking about some of the short and long-term changes and talk about some of the impacts of COVID as well as what's being planned for the future.
Sure.
So Ian will be bringing up the laptop shortly and then we can get started.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Hello. As Daniel said, I'm Brandon Melton. I'm a senior planner with Lane Transit District. I've been with Lane Transit District for all of 8 months now, so I'm pretty new to the position, but really enjoying the time and so far it's a great organization. Mission, vision, and values. We always like to share this. I'm sure some of you have seen it before, but connecting our community is our primary mission, with our vision being and all that we do. We're committed to creating a more connected, sustainable, and equitable community. And then our core values there: respect, integrity, innovation, equity, safety, and collaboration. So just briefly, Danielle already laid out, but kind of want to go chronologically. We'll start looking at some statistics, and we'll walk through kind of from the where our numbers were at as far as ridership goes and our service hours around before COVID, and then we'll see what happened during COVID and after. I'm sure some of you have some ideas, but we'll put some numbers to it. And then we'll talk a little bit about the system review, which is something that is done periodically, usually every 3 or 4 years, where we take a holistic look at the transit system and where we can make improvements and efficiencies, where the best areas are to add service maybe. And then we'll just briefly touch on the long range mobility plan, because that's really something that's upcoming and you'll see a lot more of in the next few months. So in general, we have about 113 buses. About 58 of those are hybrid, 30 are electric, and 25 are what we call renewable diesel R99 fuel source. Ridership, as you can see, has steadily grown, and you'll see in the next slide just kind of how that compares to pre-COVID numbers. We offer free student passes to K through 12 students, about 14,000 there. Our honored riders are for older adults, have a half fare, about 9,000 of those, and then half fare for lower income individuals. We employ about 255 drivers, operators that are focused on service delivery, maintenance workers, and then our admin office has about 70. And then about 75% of the people in the community believe that we provide value to the community. And so here's what I was talking about a little hard to read there, but I'll try to describe it for you. Our peak ridership, and this is looking specifically at weekday ridership, and for the average weekday ridership, it's better to look at the total ridership was around 10 million before COVID. And on the last slide, I'll go back real quick. We're at about 6.2. So it's climbing, but we're still not nearly what we were before. You look at the average total weekday boardings, you can see that red blotch there, that's COVID. Really, and that's something that's happened across the country. It's not just specific to us, and there's only a few systems out there that have truly recovered their ridership to pre-COVID numbers. So we're all in the same boat, as far as that goes, and we continue to steadily rise. I'll note Eugene has quite a bit of influence from our UO ridership. You can see, and in the data, kind of hard to see from where you're at, but there are dips. You can see when there's a summer break or a winter break, it really falls off because we get a lot of MX ridership during those times. But part of building back our ridership and what draws people to ride transit is often focused around convenience. With convenience, that means frequency. So how often is the bus coming around where you can rely on it being there? and able to get to the appointments that you need to get to and the places you need to get to on time. And so the next slide shows sort of where our service hours are. So that's the number of hours buses are operating within the system. You can see it drop down, our 100% being pre-COVID to about 40% during COVID on our weekday service. So less than half of what we had before. We are coming up to just this current service period, about 84% of what it was. Some of that is limited by the number of operators that we have. So, you know, we did have quite a few operators that were reduced, and we're continuing to build back that fleet. That's a pretty specialized group of people that have to have the technical skill to drive one of those big buses around town and in traffic, but also have to have the people skills to work with the community and be a positive influence there. So we continue to try to build back our operator numbers, and they're about actually where they were prior to COVID. But another, I guess, outcome from COVID or an effect of COVID is that we have an increase in folks, you know, taking off of work for either illness or, you know, calling off for various reasons. So we have to maintain a larger pool of what we call our extra board. So those are folks that fill in when people are sick, or they take, you know, they might take some shifts when people are off on vacation. So we have to have more operators to do the same amount of work than we did before. And there's a pretty close trend to COVID that changed a lot of people's perspectives on, I guess, working. So in response to COVID, we did undergo a system review. As I mentioned, that's something that's done periodically, but this really, you know, triggered a hard look at our system. So we looked at did a robust analysis, looking at demographic data, looking at other ridership trends on specific routes, and did an assessment of where we could find some efficiencies. We did some minor changes to routing, and I'll get to that in the next slide. But we look at short and long-term recommendations, the short term being changes that we can make without adding a lot of resources, like operators to make those changes. So like small deviations in routes, that's an efficiency, but doesn't require more operators to do. And then longer term may take, you know, it as resources allow is really what we put into that category. We did adopt the plan back in October, our board did. So it's been, and we're slowly rolling out some of those changes, not necessarily slowly. We've put quite a bit more on the road. Specifically for MX frequency, that's something that maybe people have noticed, that we're back to about 10-minute frequency during peak times. So if you think, depending on how familiar you are with transit, our peak times are usually start in the early commuting hours, and then both on both ends of the commuting day. But because of our student population, it does stay pretty steady throughout the day. And you can actually see peaks at bell times. So that's our core or our peak time. So we try to focus our frequency and our resources during that time, because that's when most people want to ride. We also returned our core routes. So that would be like a route 36 or 66, those to a 30-minute frequency. That's really when transit becomes you know, much more acceptable level, where you can count every half hour you're going to be able to catch a bus to get out to where you want to go, and that spreads out, you know, further out into the community. We expanded coverage, being responsive to development in the Willow Creek area on 36, extended 41, same being responsive to some of the feedback we got in the public outreach to Peterson Barn. And then work a 15-minute frequency on Coburg between Eugene Station and Harlow Road. And that's a corridor. It combines a couple of routes that go through there. The 66, 67, and the Route 12 all go through there, and combined they create a 15-minute frequency in that corridor, which does align with the CFEC area recently identified by the City of Eugene. So, what's next? We're looking at our long-range mobility plan. You notice we still have a long way to go to get our ridership back to where it was and hopefully exceed it someday. And so it's gonna take some, out of the box thinking. It's gonna take some big ideas and part of this, planning process will be reestablishing a vision for what transit looks like in 20 years from now. It'll be called, Connect 2045, 2045 being the out year. Our last long-range transit plan was updated in 2014, so it's getting a little dusty. There's still a lot of good stuff in it, so we're gonna take what we can from that plan and bring it forward, the best ideas out of that and hopefully build on that as well. It'll involve a lot of robust public engagement. Like I said, you're gonna be seeing a lot more of this in the coming months from us. New and updated goals and policies. And we really want to look at more, this is something that the previous plan didn't do, that we'd like this new plan to do, is really identify specific investments that we can make in our system to make improvements during that time. And probably one of the most important parts, as I'm sure you all know, is aligning with our city, our municipal partners, our cities, Eugene and Springfield, and Coburg is also part of the metro area. But trying to align land use changes with the service that we can provide, because transit works best in densely developed areas. So I would welcome questions. I know that was a lot. So please, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for coming. Yeah, we do that.
Oh, okay.
Let's say we have a question. I had two questions. One, just quickly, what areas has ridership bounced back? Do you know what places?
I mostly around MX and like our core.
Oh, sorry, other cities. You said other.
Oh, other cities. Oh, gosh, off the top of my head, Salem's been done pretty well, actually. They're getting close back to their ridership, which is interesting that it's in the same state. So that's worth looking at, and probably something that we will do some comparisons with other agencies that have seen ridership bounce back. I think a lot of us are still trying to get our arms around what are all of the factors that go into that stagnated ridership comeback. And I think there's a lot of it. I think, COVID obviously made us a little more hyper aware of being in confined spaces with strangers. Maybe it made us maybe a little more antisocial, or some of us. And I think at the time it was kind of a perfect storm where interest rates on vehicle loans were really low leading up to COVID. So a lot of people were purchasing vehicles at really low interest rates. And so once they had access to a vehicle, not a lot of people necessarily come back to using transit. But as I mentioned, frequency is king. I think in a lot of cases we're building back to our the service that we had before, but we need to continue to build on that in order to draw people to it, to say, we have what we call our captured riders. Those are folks that just really don't have an option but transit to get around. But then there are choice riders as well that, maybe they do have a vehicle, but they have to make a choice, like every one of us does when we decide we're going to work. What's the right option for me today? And we don't say it's transit all the time, because it certainly isn't, just because of the nature of how our transportation networks have been built up. But we want to make that choice more appealing for folks to say, okay, well, maybe I don't want to try to find parking downtown, so I'm going to hop on MX and I'm going to, get into downtown that way. Or, it might be, 15 more minutes to commute in on bus, but, I don't have to focus on the road. Maybe I can get a little work done or just relax a little bit on the bus. I don't have to worry about driving. It's a lot safer. So we're trying to, make that choice a little bit more palatable and desirable.
I did have one more. Sorry. Have you explored like having smaller buses on like the legs, like going into like less ridership areas?
Yeah, so that brings a great question. Yeah, you can take that back if you need to. Thank you. So were some areas where we did eliminate, you know, a route. I believe that was the 27 or 28, I can't remember. And I say we can remember 8 months been here. So that route was eliminated during COVID and didn't come back, and mainly because it just didn't have the ridership to and part of that, and why I bring that up is, you know, we typically have 40-foot buses and 60-foot buses. We don't really have much in between except for on our ride source buses. So that is an option, is doing smaller vehicles. You know, there's a lot of new technologies around what we call mobility on demand, which is similar to like a ride hailing app, you know, where if you've been down to Cottage Grove, we have a Cottage Grove connector where you can open up your app and say, hey, I'd like to go from here to here. The bus comes by, or it's actually it's a cutaway. And so, yeah, smaller vehicle picks you up, delivers you where you need to go. So part of the long range mobility plan will be looking at areas that may be good candidates for that. We also were successful in getting an Attain, it's called the Attain grant. It was a federal grant to do a pilot project out in the Bethel School District area, looking at that kind of a service in that area. So we need to understand what it takes to operate a service like that from a resource perspective. We need to see, you know, how willing people are to get on and ride it, and if it's going to be worthwhile to make the investment. So we have a great opportunity with the Attain pilot to study that. So yes, we would be looking at areas with lower ridership. What are some alternative ways? We're also looking to invest in expanding bike share as well. So that could be another opportunity to expand first mile, last mile connection to buses. That sometimes is a hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, that leads into my question was gonna be about modes. Is there any good survey data about what other modes those, you know, 1/3 of the riders compared to pre-COVID are doing? Do we know if they're more bike usage? I mean, anecdotally, it certainly looks like e-bikes are having this significant impact. You know, do we have a sense of,
Yeah,
or,
and
you know, what portion of people are getting in an automobile, or
Mhm.
is bike ridership up?
yeah. So fortunately, we have seen a lot of great success in the bike share program and are hoping to build on that. But speaking to survey data, the most recent survey I've seen specific to the Eugene metro area, Eugene Springfield, was a survey that was conducted by LCOG. They're currently in the process of updating their regional transportation plan. And that the survey showed that there was a decrease in transit mode share and an increase in single occupancy vehicle. So that it looks like, based on that survey, which was a statistically valid survey, that people are moving to automobiles. Personal automobiles, I should say.
I'm gonna switch gears just a tiny bit, because my question always for LTD is about public transportation to and from the airport.
Yeah, so I don't have any news to share right now. But we are evaluating potential scenarios, so that we could provide that, if we could provide that service. So we need to see how it pencils out. Airport service is really challenging given, you know, when our flights come in and out. So I think there's a 5:20, 5:30 flight that's typically going out. So in order to get to the airport, we would have to run that service before there were any other service on the road.
Yeah, I've
And
heard
then-
that response
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, and so that's one thing, and then we do have some that get in pretty late, and it's you know, where do we bring them if we don't have any other service running? So they don't have a transit system to land into, to get where they need to go in the community. But that's not to say nothing's impossible, but we do want to look at closely what potential scenarios might be that could be longer term.
It's
solutions.
definitely something that I get a lot of feedback on
Oh, yeah.
from community members,
Mhm.
that are younger, wanna live here and work
Yeah.
here, and they're surprised when they land and there's no public transportation
Yeah.
option to get anywhere from the airport.
Yeah,
Um, and I've met with your predecessors before and had this just similar discussion, and one of the answers that was given, was that most airports are in the city.
Mhm.
And I'm like, actually, no, that's not,
No.
then planes couldn't
I
land.
know
I
that.
found that very strange. But that was just one of, they're like, nope, it's too hard because the airport's not in the city. And I said, well, there's a lot of precedent out there for
Mhm.
public transportation and
yeah,
because airports actually aren't in
No,
cities. But, so I thought that was very interesting, but also then the other one, which is there's no connecting service. When you get to downtown, what do you do then? To me, in personal experience, it's like, well, at least you could get to downtown and Uber from there instead of Ubering from the airport.
Mm,
I mean,
yeah.
that's just a little feedback, is like,
sure.
now you're centrally located. It's less expensive, depending on what it is, as far as like gradually
Mhm.
introducing something into the system,
Right.
but,
Yeah.
and especially on top of all the proposed airport improvements and expansion that is going to happen. Lots more parking at the airport.
Yeah,
Which maybe if there was a public transportation option, there wouldn't need to be all this money spent on parking.
sure.
So anyway, just
Yeah. No,
something that's
feedback-
always
feedback
on my
received,
mind.
And appreciate that, and we'll take that back and to our scenario planning task of like, what are some possibilities of, would it be beneficial to bring
Mm.
folks in, even if they're not getting to public transit necessarily, but
Mhm.
maybe make it a little easier to connect to their final destination.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jan?
Well, my first question was similar to Laura's, was just about and you addressed it some about what do you attribute the issues to from COVID and not gaining back. I'm wondering do you think that part of it, or do you have any information that part of it is that people aren't commuting downtown to work as much?
Mhm. Yeah.
And it seems like that would have an impact as.
So we haven't done any specifics study within Eugene Springfield Metro on that. But what I have seen is study that was done in, I believe it was King County Metro around Seattle. And they did show that there has been a shift in that traffic flow of people aren't necessarily going into downtown and back out to the suburbs as much as that traffic pattern has changed because there are more people working from home. They noted, and this was just sort of a study that was done in that particular environment, but people were going more suburb to suburb, much larger city, obviously, and there are more jobs, I guess, out in the suburb area. That doesn't really apply here. So I would be surprised if that was the situation, but I could see, work from home being a contributing factor.
And I also had one other quick question. I just wanted to understand when you were referring to bike share, you mean the Peace Health bike share, program, just having a station of bikes at the end of a bus route, is that?
Well, I think, having more of a network of Peace Health, or bike share system, expanding that system that, maybe you can get a bike in one location that's a little bit of ways from transit. Right now, it's very focused on the downtown core, but maybe there's an opportunity that is expanding actually in Springfield to the Gateway area now. So we're going to be looking at opportunities to expand
That
that
makes
fleet and make it also a little more up to date because those bikes are aging. So,
They're
yeah.
one.
They're well cared for, but
Makes sense, yeah.
Thanks for coming. And I appreciate the work LTE's done over the last year plus. I had the opportunity to sit on some of those advisory councils, and the amount of public input was really genuine, which was great. I'm curious, you've kind of got a fresh perspective coming into this role, waving the wand of, funding aside, because I think that issue maybe is gonna get harder for a while. what do you think this community's greatest opportunity is? As far as leaning into this system and, you know, pushing in the location we need to be going for where.
Yeah, I mean, I would. I don't want to make this seem like a cop-out, but I think we really need to ask the community those questions and get a vision from what the community wants to see and thinks will serve them best. And you said you were part of some of those groups that were meeting, and that I can maybe share with the group. So we're looking at ridership right? So we look at the number, and that, number goes up, that means good, okay. It's a very superficial thing. What does transit really mean for the community from areas of housing, which is, maybe one of, if not the largest areas of challenges for the area, for health and health outcomes, and workforce, connecting people to jobs, and education. So those are 4 outcome areas that we're looking at, of trying to understand and move the needle on in the community through our position as a transit provider and mobility manager, is what we like to consider it, and being a connector in the community, trying to live the vision, right? So great question. I know that was kind of yeah, we're going to be asking. I think that's going to be one of the what I think should be an outcome of our long range mobility plan, is getting that game plan together of leaning into our strengths and deciding as a community what's the direction, what's our guiding light, our true north.
And I think one of the components that gets to the airport a little bit, is like not sacrificing. I think some of our commissioners have said this on other topics, the good or the perfect,
Yeah,
the idea that we have to solve the entire airport transportation issue all at once in the first go, as opposed to, can we pick it off in kind of peak travel
yeah,
moments, and test the waters and see
Sure.
if there's adoptability. And sometimes the community only knows the version of the system they've experienced.
mhm.
So,
Yeah, and I think we've got a lot of great people at LTD that are that have some great ideas, but I know there's a lot of people out in the community that have some great ideas, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to sort of circle the wagons and revisit some of those ideas and take a fresh perspective.
Just a question in terms of, the ride share, accessibility vans and some of those programs. What percentage is the scope of, LTD's program? Because those are some of the most vulnerable people in our community who may have the most limited other options available.
Are you talking about RideSource?
Yeah, right.
RideSource, okay, so that's our paratransit service, so that operates in line with our fixed route system within 3/4 of a mile. Folks that qualify for RideSource can access that service, and so far, as far as funding goes, that has stayed the same. We're currently going through working with a consultant on an operations analysis for that service, on how can we provide even better service through that through RideSource, and to make sure that those populations have the access that they need to get around town in the community.
Yeah, I know, I've just got some, friends from my church community.
Yeah.
The wait times for that are
Oh,
running
yeah.
for a while.
Right,
If you're sitting in a chair waiting for that van,
yeah,
and they plan accordingly and schedule ahead of time. They're either waiting or they're leaving church early because their ride is here now.
Yeah. yeah. Yeah, that is a challenge, because if you can imagine, I should have had a slide of the network on, but I didn't. But you look at that network and then you expand out 3/4 of a mile, and how many people we serve. I think I did have a paratransit number up there, but it is pretty significant, the number of people that we serve with a door-to-door level of service. And some of them often have mobility limitations, so it takes a little bit longer to get on and off, and so there's a lot of challenges that go with that, and we're trying to provide the best service that we can for those folks as well.
Lily?
Yeah, so I'm wondering if you have any more information on how many students use LTD, since I know, for example, with the 4J school district, students like myself get a free bus pass. And not everyone I know uses that, but I also think that like students around my age, for example, we often don't have our own cars, right? So using the bus can be, can make it a lot easier to get around. So like, does that change during the summer, during the school year? What are students using the bus for?
Right. I don't have those numbers in front of me. We do, like I said, K through 12, they have access to the bus. Now, whether they use it or not, that's something I think that we're working on our youth engagement in a number of different facets and trying to understand, if you don't ride the bus, like, why are you riding the bus? What can we do to make you more comfortable riding the bus? I think we do like travel training type activities around town, but can we do that maybe more focused on high school and younger, so that we can build those kinds of those habits, so it's not I think a lot of us just we set ourselves in our habits really early. And so if you've never ridden transit, you haven't had access to transit before, like it's just not something to think about, or like, oh, that's, and I think there is some classism around transit too, of like, oh, it's just for certain types of people. Like, no, it's for everybody. And so I think I don't have the numbers for you, but I think that is an important thing. My daughter's in Girl Scouts, and we made it work so that they could ride the bus to get on their field trip, and so getting them exposed to those kinds of opportunities, I think, can help change the mindset for a lot of young people.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, my second question was going to be about like, how would you be looking at like building those habits? But I think we've answered.
Yeah, I think, and there are examples, and I think LTD has done it in the past. Again, I'm showing my newness to the organization, where it's almost like a field trip where they'll bring a bus out to the school, the kids can get in the bus, they might, go somewhere and do a tour around our facility. We have a big bus washing building, so it's kind of like going for the car wash, but for a bus, so the kids really, got a kick out of that. So we're looking at, potential for reinvigorating those kinds of opportunities.
I'm gonna jump on Lily's, just based on where I live in Eugene, and my teenage daughter that started out taking the bus and then stopped taking the bus and just walked because the bus only went halfway to our house. So it's still like a mile and a half to the closest bus. And we're up in Southeast, and there's probably around in our 2 to 3 block area, there was probably at least 15 to 20 high school students her same age, and everyone did the same thing. And what it turns into is driving.
Sure.
Because if you're already in the car going to the bus stop, right, at a certain point in time to make it, then you just keep going.
Right. Yeah.
So that was a big, and I see parents doing it. It's like, as soon as they're done with the bus from Roosevelt, because the bus from Roosevelt comes right down our street every single day, twice a day. But all these kids then need to get to school another way. And you can say, oh, when we were kids, we'd ride our bikes up that hill both ways. But quite literally, you have to go all the way up 30th, then all the way up Agate, and it's not particularly safe. And that's the way they'd have to go if they rode bikes. So they tend to either get a ride or walk.
Sure.
And just abandoned the bus, the 28, which is the closest one on Hilliard that takes them right to South. So that was, she's like, by the time I get to the bus stop, I might as well just keep walking and I'll get to school.
Sure.
Or if it's in the car, you just keep, why stop?
Yeah.
So,
and it's a very specific situation of how do we serve that kind of a neighborhood where they're just outside the, and I don't like saying this, but we do have limited resources like everyone else, and we do have to kind of make decisions on where we draw a line. you know.
No, I
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
get it,
yeah.
but when you look around and there's 20 kids,
Oh, yeah,
I mean, that's,
yeah,
there's less than 2,000 kids at South.
right, and it sounds like biking is really a challenge in that area, so.
And so then you go, okay, well, let's have an electric
Yeah.
bike, and I'm like, I'm not paying for an electric
Right.
bike, I'm paying for
Yeah.
my taxes for your bus pass.
Yeah, sure, sure.
So it's just one of those things where that part of our community isn't very well served.
Mm, okay, yeah, I think that falls into the similar category of those maybe lower ridership areas that we need to look at alternative types of service in those areas that we can provide.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I think we keep trying to figure out,
Yeah.
is it normal that the school district, you know, LTD basically provides the bus service for the high school and middle schools? Just the high school in the district?
Mhm.
Is that normal in comparative communities?
I've seen it in other communities, yeah.
Okay.
I think for metropolitan communities, it makes a lot of sense. That
then-
if you have a transit network, it's a lot more efficient to get kids on those buses than it is to do you know,
School
a
route.
private school bus service.
One more.
I think I just wanna say, like, kind of echoing what Devin had said, that, like, I think a big issue is that the bus routes don't reach people, but at the same time, I think the bigger issue is like, people don't really think about taking the bus, you know, like like, I'm not sure that I would feel comfortable taking the bus by myself, for example,
Mhm.
you know, as something to like think
Yeah.
about, to change that. Like,
Yeah,
Mhm.
so we've been working with the Sustainable City Year program with University of Oregon, and we engaged with a couple of some public relations courses that talked very specifically about changing that perspective for you know, college students in particular, but it also applies to youth and around you know, perceived safety and level of safety. You are much safer on a bus than you are in a car. It's just statistically, driving in a single occupancy vehicle is one of the most dangerous things, if not the most dangerous thing people do on a daily basis. Whereas when you're in a bus, you're a lot safer. I think people feel sometimes uncomfortable being in a more public setting around people that they aren't familiar with. But I think at least my perspective, it's a lot like just walking on a public street, you know, that you're gonna be exposed to the public. And I think we were alluding to with COVID, like people got kind of out of that habit of being out in public and being around people. And so, yeah, I understand that. Yeah. And we did specifically talk about how females are more hesitant to be in that kind of a space too. But there's always a driver on the bus, and our drivers are trained to de-escalate. We have, you know, great public security that's also works their way through the system. So and cameras everywhere, more cameras than you would ever imagine. So there's some safety in that too of around surveillance. So I think that's something we continue to try to improve on. And like I said, exposing people to that sort of a lifestyle really of choosing to take the bus.
Thank you so much.
I think, cause I think what, Brandon and I had discussed was the best, perhaps a good use of the discussion time would be to potentially start to get into some of the long range visioning. So, what Brandon told me when we met was, you know, they're preparing to launch sort of that engagement for long range planning, but, we could use this time to seed sort of what are your thoughts? Like what does the future of mobility look like to you? What levels of service or like what infrastructure or modes, like thinking outside the box, like what kind of do you envision?
Yeah, so visioning,
Do you wanna
I mean,
say that?
that's something that is a lot of times is a facilitated type of an activity. I didn't really prepare to facilitate it, but I would welcome any kind of like initial, we're all thinking about transit now and how we might make it better. So I think, you know, it's just some you know, reactions are great. I think something to set up too, we talked about limited resources and how frequency is really important to getting people to drive, and this being the getting people to ride. Sorry, I didn't finish my thought there. I was on to the next one. But, so with frequency, you know, you put more resources oftentimes into a smaller area. So you're driving more buses on, you know, the highest, ridership routes. Then you have the concept of coverage, like how, and this is what you're getting at, is how much of the community are we reaching? And then, okay, well, if we reach out to the community, then maybe buses aren't running as frequently in these areas where there's more people that are riding. And so there's always a trade-off, but it's one that we do have to constantly consider. So there's that, there's the topic of new technology, but I will say, just to kind of tee up any kind of conversation is, you know, the key is from a sustainability standpoint and reducing greenhouse gases is getting people on the bus and out of single occupancy vehicles. That is the biggest thing that we can do, the biggest lever that we can pull as a transit agency and as a really a community to drive down those kinds of emissions. So that being said, happy to hear any kind of, I've heard a lot, but if you have anything else to
You
share,
know,
yeah,
kind of an overlap we've got
Yeah.
going on, I think.
Airport.
great
Yeah,
conversation.
I'm just kind of just tagging on to stuff we'd already started talking about. And it's helpful to hear you say that the trade-off between the frequency and the further coverage. I think I can see why that's a challenge, because certainly both of those things are gonna help bring people in, and how much, you know, what's the comparison? If you're downtown and you know that every 10 minutes you can get a bus, that makes it much more likely to ride it than not knowing the schedule, not knowing, you know, whatever, how to do. But I live in a neighborhood close to where Devon is, and we have never gotten in the habit of riding the bus. And because there's a bit more of a walk than you might want, and less for me than for you, so I don't have as good an excuse. But thinking long-term, thinking about the youth is a big deal. And I think what we, you know, doing is like people, their attitude about it, whether it's safe, whether it's fun, whether it's convenient. So things that you already talked about, finding ways, I think like starting in middle school, when that's about old enough to maybe ride themselves, but at least start developing those habits. And if you could get in neighborhoods, you know, a group of kids together, then they're not gonna be scared. It's gonna be okay or cool, maybe not cool, but not bad. I can see those things, you know, and maybe having some connector buses that pull them in or something like that as a really big help. It seems like then you develop the habits and they're much more likely to carry on.
Great input.
Well, I want to get the other side of the coin, in that I grew up in Denver. And I rode the bus from 3rd grade to 9th grade. And every day. And people from my neighborhood did the same thing. And we really were good friends as a result of riding the bus. And yet, obviously, the bus driver wouldn't put up with anything. But it was really a good experience for all of us. And it was also an economical. I mean, at that point, we didn't have passes. It was 4 cents to get on the bus and go several miles to my school. But it was really, I think, a very positive thing. And I can say that even at my age, I ride the bus because I get a free pass on the bus. So it's a good deal for me. So I can ride the bus downtown and do whatever I want.
Yeah, that's a great resource and kind of touches on, you know, the points I made about, you know, we talk about health outcomes, and that includes, you know, mental health outcomes and making connections with either people or social activities that you might not otherwise have access to in some cases. And that goes with, you know, on both sides of the spectrum, you know, our on-end riders and our youth riders. You know, the vulnerable populations that don't have a lot of as many transportation options. And all of a sudden, like you said, you know, in middle school, you can meet up with your friends somewhere and get together and do something, and you have some level of independence that way. And you, as you get older, you have more independence when you're not as comfortable driving. So, yeah.
So not unlike Tom, I grew up in Eugene taking the bus all the time. And back then, South had school buses. But I lived close enough, I just walked. It was not hard. I didn't need to take any kind of transportation to get to school, so I myself on a bike. And I took the bus all the way through U of O as well. I was super reliant on the city bus when I was at U of O,
Mhm.
because a lot of times you couldn't afford to live as close to campus, so we'd live out Amazon, and I relied on that bus to get back and forth to campus all the time. That was a while ago, but now that South, you know, to Courtney's questioning, like, they rely on LTD for their bus service. And so my concern as just an active citizen is like, okay, if my child and these 20 other children are not having service, like, but there's no other option. Like, how in a public school environment is that equitable?
Right.
Because it could be any neighborhood
Mhm.
that is just too far from the bus stop for all kinds of reasons. It could be timing, you know, whatever it is. It's not gonna just be our neighborhood
Mhm.
that is having that issue for getting kids to school when there's no other bus option.
Yeah.
That leaves parents hanging.
Right.
I mean, that need to go to work or whatever it is the parents need to do. And that piece I struggle with. I would really like to see an option that actually provides some kind of, like, where every high school student is guaranteed a ride to school, like they would be in a school bus situation.
Mhm.
Within a certain distance. We don't have that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really lacking. And
Okay.
South also has a very issues with kids not going to school.
Mm. Yeah.
And so it seems like you would like to make it as easy as possible
Right.
for families and kids to actually get to school.
Mhm.
So that would be, my vision
Yeah,
would be
that's great.
something equitable across the entire school district, not school district, but schools that are trading in their school buses for city bus pass.
Great feedback. Thank you.
I think, so to double and triple down on the frequency component, I think about the things we hear about, you know, and then they have to walk a decent distance and they're halfway there by walking, they're just gonna walk the rest. But if the frequency is running such that they see the bus as they're, you know, and I just think about in other communities where I spent a lot of time on transit, I don't pay attention to the schedule because the frequency is such that I know I have a
Right.
7 or 12-minute cadence.
Yep.
And what I also know is there's a cost to that type of service, and there's a question of whether our population can sustain the cost it would take. You know, is it a loss leader and who pays the loss? When I look at from a like long-term planning, when I look at like the map that you all provided, and I kind of blur my eyes at the system, I feel like I'm missing the ring.
Mm.
You know, we are this really inefficient crisscrossing. And you have to crisscross to get to one under the other. So if I'm an employer, which happened to be an employer out at Highway 99, and we have workforce out in Thurston, they may be 2 hours to take the bus to our employment site. And we operate in one of the larger employment bases.
Right.
And so I look at that and I think in a long-term comprehensive kind of transportation planning, is it that we're missing, you know, just what are we missing that helps
Sure.
bridge that inefficiency
Mhm.
spaghetti bowl?
Yeah, so I think you're looking for like a crosstown connection kind of situation right now.
And
We
if
are-
we hit there.
Yeah, well, we
I see
operate
yours.
on a spoken wheel or spoken hub.
Without the wheel.
Situation.
Right.
Yeah, without the
Without
wheel, just the spoken hub.
But does
So it works, if that's how our system currently works, we don't have really strong crosstown connections other than
Yeah.
the core of MX. Will bridge some of those routes between Springfield and Eugene. So But yeah, that's great feedback. I think something that will likely come out of this long-range planning effort will be a specific study on our routing and what we would consider a redesign. That's not saying we're gonna, wipe the slate clean or anything, but a redesign simply means that we're doing a more in-depth analysis specifically on where our buses are going. More in-depth than like a system review.
One just little anecdotal one in terms of the sense that the bike racks on the bus will not accommodate a wide tire e-bike.
Yeah,
My brother is primarily a bike commuter and he can't use the bus for longer distances.
right,
Because his bike doesn't fit.
yeah,
So just, those simple of the adaptations might not, doesn't require a whole bus to change the rack.
sure,
To make them available to a growing population of folks who are, e-bike ridership, anecdotally certainly seems to be up substantially.
Mhm.
And a significant number of the ones I see are white tire bike.
yeah. It's good, that's good feedback.
I mean, he gets medical services to vets and lives near the fairgrounds,
Mhm.
It's often his brother, the Uber ride driver, is his transportation fallback, And he'd rather not do it sometimes, so would I,
Mhm.
as well as the greenhouse gas.
Yeah, good feedback.
Did you bring the student population?
Yeah, did you?
Is this
I see yours.
Hey, guys, thanks for your support. Glad you're here. I did not. No, I don't, maybe.
Yeah, you did.
You guys ride the bus? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a sample.
There you go. But you're university students, yeah? Yeah.
Well, here's a
Just-
folks, what would make it easier? I mean, if you're.
I don't think that's the time for that.
That's public comment.
Okay.
We're not gonna go there.
We're not gonna roll back all
No.
the way to public comment.
No,
Now, is it a journalism class or? No?
Public policy management.
Yeah.
3 p.m.ers.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody taking the bicycle planning class this time?
Rick Schlossberg, come on.
Well, I took the,
Sorry.
Oh, were you in?
it just won't ever end. That's the problem.
Yeah, awesome.
I know.
Thanks.
Cool.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I have to run to a middle school band concert, but thank you for having me.
Enjoy.
I'm sure it'll be great. Oh, it will be. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. And yeah, thanks for everybody. I feel like that was a really positive discussion.
It's a tough nut, and when he did those numbers, I just looked at him and went, oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, 2/3 of what the ridership was pre-COVID.
All righty. Moving right along to our favorite part of the evening, which is the nominations for chair and vice chair. So if anyone has any nominations they'd like to make, now is when you do it. I do. But if everyone is welcome to nominate one or either position. Okay. All right, so I'll go first and do I need to make a motion? Like, how does it, I forget.
I think this can be like a
Just
discussion.
a discussion?
first,
Okay,
and
that's
then
what
at
I
the
was
end,
hoping.
like,
I was
people
trying to
can
remember.
decide, like, at the moment.
I want to nominate Mitra for chair. We've had a lot of discussions about it with her. She's very willing to do it. She's very excited, and I think her experience this whole year as vice chair, really positive, both in the meetings and outside of meetings and other meetings that we go to, like our quarterly meeting with the mayor and assistant city managers are really positive, and I think she'd be great at it, and she's ready to do it. But not here. Sadly.
Subject.
I can't, yeah, I just made it all up.
Do we know
If she's gonna be here.
We don't,
Mhm.
and that, so it's,
We'll know before next meeting though.
Okay.
I think it's like June sixth, don't quote me on that, but it's like something in the first week of June when
Yeah,
council will
that's
be
what she said.
finalizing the
And-
appointments, so.
and what we learned is that incumbents, actually, their page is a different color than other applicants. So in that way, council tends to look at the incumbents and they can identify them pretty straightforward. I don't necessarily have any concerns, but we don't know what's gonna happen, so. I don't really have a plan B.
So do you need a second?
No, I was just
for another
reading, I was
nomination?
just reading the bylaws that you sent. It says. Any commissioner may nominate a candidate from the commissioner for the position of chair or vice chair. Nominations need not be seconded.
Okay.
A member may decline a nomination because of an inability to serve, but may not withdraw in favor of another member, which is an odd thing, but I. Any member may move to close the nominations. A second for that is required. Nominations will be voted on in May. If the motion carries, the chair then calls for election in June.
So there's at least,
Well, Laura, did you have something?
Well, I was gonna nominate Alexi, though I didn't ask him, only if Mitra is not gonna be there, but I would have nominated him for vice chair if Mitra is gonna be here. But if she's not, then I would bump my nomination to chair if she's. That's my.
We should assume she's.
Alexia, are you good with that?
We can't hear you. You're muted.
Can't hear you.
He's not.
No, he's muted. Like,
Do I have to decide right now? That wasn't on my dance card up till now.
You do.
Well, I think you can always withdraw next month. So,
and I was gonna throw out there if, because I know how this goes, that I would throw my hat in the ring for vice chair if there's not a vice chair candidate. That I would be willing to do it. I'm gonna pull a Jan and go, I'll do it, if nobody else really wants to or feels comfortable or has the time. So just a little bit of a buffer for you,
We don't have the election. until-
Um,
Just want to know if you accept the nomination.
right?
yeah, what if we both are nominated, and then can I have a conversation with someone who's had that role to get a little better feel for what the commitment entails? And then if that works, I'll keep it, and if not, I will remove my hat from the ring. Does that sound like a good plan? And for now, we have two nominees. I expect that it will not be a contentious election when we get to it.
Can you nominate yourself?
I can nominate myself.
What would you prefer for the record?
I'll nominate myself for vice chair, but I don't
If-
care,
If needed.
if needed, only if needed, and I've done it before, so I can help you. If you wanna talk to me about it, great, or Laura,
I nominate you as a backup.
a backup,
vice
okay,
chair.
that sounds great.
backup vice chair or chair? What is it?
Backup vice chair.
Your
vice
backup vice chair,
If
Alexi's
Alexi
being
brings it
nominated
down.
for vice chair and Mitra is being nominated for chair.
And if Mitra's not here, then Alexi's being nominated for chair. It's like
Okay,
a tiered.
yeah, if Mitra's not
thing. Only
reappointed.
if she
If-
does forget.
That might
to-
change what he's willing to do.
Yeah, are-
You will.
I
But
think she
she'll
will.
be here. Yeah, that's not.
well, no, it more depends if she gets reappointed.
I know.
Right.
She. I don't know that.
There's like, well, who knows? with council.
Your bylaws are set up to assume certain things.
Well, the bylaws were changed. The commission voted to change the bylaws a couple years ago. They used to happen, not like this whole process used to happen in September. But now it happens now, so it does create a little bit of weirdness with the way the appointments happen, but it's worked out fine the
Right.
last few years.
And the reason for that was is you
Yeah.
show up as a new commissioner and the very first meeting you're asked to vote on who the chair is, and you've never been in the room
It's
with.
weird.
It's clunky either way.
Yeah.
So,
It is.
True.
yeah.
Yeah,
It is. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Is that as clear as mud or like what just
That's
happened?
We've got three names in the ring.
All right, all right.
Those were the nominations I was thinking of making before, so I'm glad it worked out that.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you, everyone, for making that pretty as smooth as it could go. Okay, committee updates. There's two action items. The first one is to review and approve the handout for the clean and reliable backup energy systems. Alexi, do you?
Yeah. May I give a little intro? Thanks. So at the last Sustainability Commission meeting, actually for the last couple meetings, we've had some conversations and we heard some public comment from David Vanderhagen from Northwest Natural, and we received a letter from a hearth dealer representing, I think, the Association of Patio and Hearth Dealers up in Salem, talking about, you know, some concerns about factual accuracy and other stuff. And I think everyone here was around in the last meeting. It's recorded, but had some conversations. In the end, we made some minor modifications and voted as a group, as this group, to approve it with some mods. But then in the last month, notwithstanding that it was approved, we invited David from Northwest Natural to join us in our working group, in our committee meeting, just like we invited eWeb to join us previously for a conversation in the same committee group. And so based on that conversation, that was sort of the first 40 minutes of our hour-long session in the last month. In the last 20 or so, and offline, we made some modifications to primarily the first paragraph in that document, including citing sources that were, you know, there's some facts and figures in there that didn't have a reference, so now they have references, and made some other adjustments. So we would like to bring it back before this group again in a, you know, an updated form with more info, with good citations in there, and some rewrites for, I think, clarity and making sure that we have a balanced tone, recognizing the purpose of the document is to let people know what options are out there and what they might look like for clean and reliable backup energy. Pretty much all the concerns that were raised were not actually about that. They were about the preamble, the introduction, the first paragraph. So we tried to make that not even have the appearance of partiality, because we just want to provide an introduction, say not all energy systems are 100% reliable. Here's some options if that's a concern of yours, with some local recent examples from January 24. So that's the preamble. It is in the packet. Thank you, Danielle, for doing that. The revised version, and if others want to say something, great. If not, I would love to bring it back to this group to approve it as currently drafted.
All right. Jan?
I think it looks good. I appreciate the amendments, and I think that the graphics folks did a great job of incorporating the changes that we asked for, and making it with the Sustainability Commission's logo and a statement of who was to credit or blame at the bottom, and the other. So I think it looks good. Appreciate it.
Well, I'll just give some perspective on, I think, you know, we did receive testimony from somebody who had content or perspectives in the technology categories of the document, and we didn't, and they offered to come, and we chose not to bring them in. And so I do flag, because as I really tried to understand the core approach and mission of the commission, I think gathering input is one of the things that is important. So I wish we had done that component. And I still am trying to understand how the commission's role exists in a place where we are creating documents to go out into the public facing, but that are not necessarily of the city, reviewed by the city or verified by it. Because I think there was some discussion in that space as well, that this is a Sustainability Commission document and not a city document. And that's a gray area that I think we probably, I need to understand a little more as we continue to do more work. So that's my feedback on this one.
Thank you. I make a motion to approve it? Yeah. Okay,
Second.
thank you. All in favor? All right. Against or abstain?
Opposed.
Opposed, okay. Thank you. All right, so the next action item, it's one action item, but there's two policy memos in it. I like to break it apart.
Okay,
Is that, so we talk about one policy
yeah, sure, that's
memo
fine.
first?
Yeah, you're right, that probably should have been two,
yeah.
those should be two separate action items. Approve one then, or vote on one, vote on the other.
All right, suppose we could have brought that up before we approved the agenda. But so I have a comment, well, actually, Laura, do you wanna talk about those and which one do you
Sure.
wanna talk about first?
Well, we have two memorandums going to council. They're informational about the research, and the first one's leaf blowers, and that came from community groups last year coming to our meetings multiple times with information requests to take up this issue. So we researched it, and this is us taking up the issue. We have, provided info about what else is happening around Oregon with leaf blowers, and we have Portland's example as the closest thing to look at. And then the second one is about artificial turf. And that's a similar thing. It was a research document with what other communities are doing, different strategies they're using to address artificial turf. And so we summarized it and gave examples. And that's what it is. So we're proposing to send both of these separately to council. And there is a typo that
I fixed it.
that's fixed.
On the, like,
Yeah, if you
on my
thought-
computer it's fixed, but the packet is there.
So I have some comments about the leaf blower memo. And I wrote some stuff up. So I was active in that same group that was formerly known as Quiet Clean Eugene. I'm not sure they're still active. It's tricky because the person that was leading it moved out of state, and that it all kind of fell apart at that point, and they were sort of fledgling last year and the year before, and I worked with them a lot as well in the neighborhood association capacity, had a lot of meetings with them. And so, and this was something I have worked on in Southeast quite a bit. And that being said, it's because while I'm in favor of restricting commercial use of gas powered leaf blowers, I feel like there's a lot left out of this memo when it comes to policy changes, and the information seems somewhat emotionally biased. And I really would strongly urge it to go back to committee, because it's my concerns with sending something like this to council. I have a lot of bullet points here. So one of my main issues is I don't feel that the triple bottom line is addressed. There's a lot of suggestions made, but not a lot of solutions on or sort of looking at the scope of what could be issues that would need to be addressed. Those aren't really in this memo at all. Like potential, like let's be responsible and address potential problems that this kind of policy change could have. I'm not saying there aren't solutions. I'm just saying they're not addressed here. There's no information about or specifically or about any interaction with any of the stakeholders that would be involved with this kind of policy policy recommendations, even though it's informational. And I was curious if there were attempts made to interact with stakeholders on the committee level in a way that maybe Alexi did, and there's something there. Let's see. There's no discussion about charging infrastructure for equipment. So how do companies keep equipment charged while out working all day, especially small companies with single trucks and a limited amount of people? There's no, hold on. There's no mention of means of enforcement if the suggested policies are adopted. And that's definitely something that would need to be addressed, is like right now, as far as noise levels of leaf blowers and other equipment, it's on a person by person, like Dennis, you would take a decibel meter supposedly and go and register how loud the leaf blower is and then make a report if it's over 60, 50, I forget if it's 60 or 50. And so and then you would have to have someone come out and actually measure it as well. So it's that kind of thing. So I'm like, how would these sort of policy suggestions be enforced? Like, where is that coming from? And then, I also, because we had something very similar in my neighborhood where neighbors went around and put flyers in people's mailboxes telling them to fire their landscapers who were not using electric equipment. And I particularly I had a hard time with that approach. So I don't really like the listing of eco-friendly companies that are using the electric, because truly there's an equitability issue there 100%, where the larger companies are going like Reese and now they all just went out of my head. The big like three are going to be able to afford to buy this equipment, repair the equipment, replace their equipment. And where like the landscaper that I employ, who's actually a minority, whose family works for him, who has to pay for his own healthcare and all these different things, cannot afford to replace his equipment. And I would not like to see him go out of business because of that reason. If this is not carefully thought out with what the solutions are and what the consequences are and how the stakeholders feel, I'm not comfortable with sending this to council as a recommendation.
Can I clarify? We didn't make recommendations in this committee. We were just researched what other communities did. So we didn't answer any of those questions because that's a huge amount of work. But this is like a policy. And this one maybe Alexi, because I didn't work on this one as much. I worked on the other one. So, but we were not trying to make recommendations.
That being said, it's making recommendations. I mean, that's exactly what the memo is doing. I mean, it's coming right out and saying, this is what we should do. No? I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I've got so many layers of mute. How about, okay, great. Yeah, so the goal was to a couple, there's like 2 or 3 goals here. One is to provide information about other local jurisdictions that have undertaken some kind of policy action on gas-powered lawn equipment, specifically gas-powered leaf blowers. We started with more than that and we landed on just leaf blowers because it seemed more like an apple we could take a bite out of. We also wanted to keep this to a short document that's a couple pages about why are people doing this and what are they doing at the policy level. So like, why are city councils, for example, Oregon and Lake Oswego, Portland and Lake Oswego, why are jurisdictions in Oregon taking on policies that have something to do with gas leaf blowers? And there's 2 flavors, sale and use. And then what are some examples? It's not intended to be a recommendations memo. It's intended to lay out why we're bothering to talk about this at all, apart from that people keep messaging this, presenting public comment and sending us notes about this stuff at least once or twice a year regularly. Apart from that, what's the reason, the pollution and the noise and whatever. And then what are policy pathways that are in effect or coming up local to us, plus the state of California banned the sale of gas-powered leaf blowers as of the beginning of 2024. I poked around to try to see what impacts of that are, sometime down the line from doing so, and I have not found the kind of thing I would like to reference. Found like the occasional article, but they're not super impartial. So if I can find that, that'd be great. But it's not intended. It's in fact intended not to be a recommendations memo. It's intended to be an informational memo. I think the fact that a lot of folks have personal experience hearing leaf blowers, or neighbors grumble about listening to them, or use them, both. Sure, 2 sides of the coin. But it's people who live in neighborhoods where somebody on the block or nearby uses one tend to hear them with some frequency, which is, I think, a lot of people in Eugene. So I think it's because it's part of a lived experience, the memo may be coming across to you or others as more like recommendations. It's really intended to be informative about policy options. So that the first part is like, why do we care? And the second part is what our jurisdiction is doing. And I think we tried to, well, I know we tried, I hope we succeeded in not making explicit recommendations.
There's a line right here that says Eugene may want to consider a similar approach with timelines similar to Portland's. I mean, there's a lot of language in here that is like that, which makes it that to me, it becomes not just informational, it is recommending the city of Eugene adopt policies that other cities have adopted, but it doesn't really say any.
Well, we're recommending that council consider, and here are things, if you're going to consider this topic, start here because these are other places doing it. These are relevant policies. If you want to think about copy pasting a policy, start here. That's the goal. Not please do.
I get it. I just think that it's not. I'm sorry. Jan, or who's first? Courtney?
Courtney was next.
I'm sorry.
I didn't pay attention. I read it as a recommendation as well, so I think that could just be signaling to maybe format and language used. I think the option formatting that felt to me like an indication that it wasn't like, here are your two options for a recommendation. So that could be just part of the feedback and re-looking at it with that lens. In listening to this part of the conversation, I think we're missing other examples where carrots are used opposed to sticks. I know the Portland programs talked about a $2 million, and I didn't find that in here. And I think that component, I think it's also missing kind of some of the equity implication discussions that you're talking about. And the other element that's missing for me, and maybe all of them a little, is we're really silent on our understanding of what we think the resource demand implications are, not just of implementing an idea, but us advising the council to put this in their list of things to assign staff to. And so that's an element that I think I'm just very cautious. Especially if we're looking at sending multiple things to the council all at once, it starts to look like we're not being strategic or focused or mindful of the budgetary constraints of what we're asking them for. So those are some of my concerns on it. And I had never thought negatively about the sound of leaf blowers, but I will now pay attention.
Jan, were you next or was Dennis? I'm sorry, I lost track.
Well, I was gonna kind of reinforce some things that Alexi said in terms of what the intent was, and clearly, I guess we didn't quite hit that mark. I think that perhaps things could be, and I think this is part of what Courtney was saying, adjusted just the language a little bit, and maybe there to say, you know, if in the future the council would wish to pursue a policy, here are some options. And just those, and then also to say, if, you know, it's almost obvious if you were going to pursue some kind of an ordinance, there would be a number of other issues that would have to be addressed, like equity, perhaps incentives, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think those could be stated. I think it's pretty obvious, but I guess it wasn't obvious enough. So that would be nice to address.
Yeah, and similar on that equity issue, is of heightened concern to me as I'm pondering it tonight. And I noticed the line about significant investments for incentives when California did a statewide ban. And it was just in response to the reality of what some of those small businesses would face. So that there was some transition assistance available. And realistically in Eugene, that makes it far less likely to get implemented short term if it has budgetary implications. But I think equity concerns need to be recognized as a transition issue.
Do you have another?
I do have one more thing to say.
Where's Lexi? Oh, Lexi, I'm sorry.
Go, Lexi.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to note that there's some of this stuff was discussed in the committee meetings about this. And some of these topics, we didn't go into detail in this informational memo because we were trying to keep it relatively brief, thinking we don't want to give council a 10-page document because they may not get read. So that's one. We did also discuss timing on when to send the various different things to council. So that is a topic that we're considering. It's not, there's not zero strategy on that, to not throw everything at council all at once. So it's a couple things to mention there. And then another, I think, I don't know if it comes across clearly in this document, but it seemed to me and us, I hope I speak for the rest, that there's a significant difference in policies that ban the sale of this equipment and policies that restrict the use of the equipment. And the California policy is a ban on sales, and they attached a lot of incentives to reduce the incremental cost of people shifting to the other equipment because they can't get the old stuff anymore. Right? You can't buy the gas stuff, electrical stuff costs more. Here's a rebate to make up that difference. The policies impacting use, I don't know that anyone has attached significant incentives to that operation-based policy. But those are topics that we did discuss in the committee meetings as we put this together. So I just want to know, like, you're raising things that we have definitely been chewing over, and to some extent, we've made a conscious decision to try to keep this thing bite-sized.
Laura, or, yeah,
See, I've forgotten. No, I guess, part of what I think we were trying to do, at least was in my mind, and I think we discussed it a little bit, I'm not sure, is taking into account that the realistic chances of council wishing to take this on as an issue aren't that high. And so we wanted to somehow balance the responsibility of responding to people who keep raising this issue to the commission and think we should be doing something about it, as well as, what is realistic in the current city environment. So we were trying to strike a balance and say, okay, well, we can say, we did do some work, we did do some looking into it. Here's what part of what we've found. Here are some potential options, and not trying to push towards some particular action. So again, I think we could adjust the cover memo, but I was just trying to explain that was certainly considered.
I was gonna propose that we end this discussion in the interest of time, because we do need to take this back to our committee and rework the messaging, because it wasn't clear. Because I wanted to see how the other document is doing. So if everyone is okay with that, and if people have more comments that want to send them to the committee, then you could email or pop in or whatever, so we get any lingering ideas that not shared out loud right now.
that seems good.
So the next one is about TERP, and it is the same thing. It is not meant to make any recommendations. It's meant to give information on what other communities have done, knowing that council is going to be talking about this in the future with the Golden Gardens plan. So that was the intent. I don't know if that came across, but yeah, so everything is linked, all the things that we found that would be of use, like other communities' experiences and challenges, we linked that so they could have this document moving forward.
Seven. We need to extend. No, I was just thinking we need to extend the meeting by, is it six?
I think it technically ends at 7:16.
6:59,
I have a quick
Oh,
plea
it
to
would be
make.
7:05. Yeah, so we should probably.
and Lily has to leave promptly at 7 as she.
She has 30 seconds.
We have 13. So,
No right.
She has.
go ahead, Lily.
I mean, with what Devin had said about the previous document, I feel very, what Devin had said specifically about talking about the triple bottom line is something that I feel like this document needs a little bit more. Because on a personal level, I was thinking about like, you have like people to consider too, right? So like, if we were to not like pursue artificial turf, for example, like what about all the parks? What about all like the sports complexes in the city? So that's something that stands out to me, especially because I play a turf sport and I also have to head out now.
Thank you, Lily. Or should I make a motion to extend, I mean, for like 10 minutes?
Probably 10 minutes is good.
Okay, make motion to extend meeting to 7:10?
To 7:15, it's
I'm sorry,
turning at
7:15?
7:05.
Oh, I thought it said 7, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Let's turn
Mine
the
says-
side.
Oh,
yeah. So-
there it is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Second.
Okay,
So
so
it's
all in
7:15.
favor? All right, as I waste a whole minute just talking about that, all right. Thank you. Okay, so we had Lily's comment and Tom. You want to make it, and Courtney, yes.
Okay, well, I was a chemistry teacher for over 30 years. And before the Golden Gardens presentation, I found a scientific paper entitled Health Impacts of Artificial Turf, Toxicity Studies, Challenges and Future Directions. And in that paper, I have 3 pages of chemicals that are in AstroTurf. And I'm just going to say a few, I'm not going to name them, but for example, there are 52 chemicals listed that are volatile organic compounds, which are not healthy compounds to have just seeping possibly into the ground or into the air or whatever. And then in addition to that, the artificial turf has plasticizers and other semi-volatile compounds. And in addition to that, they have PFAS, which is forever chemicals that will stay around. And those, there are 22 metals in there. So I'm not crazy about artificial turf, and I don't think it's a healthy thing. But again, I am but one person.
Thank you.
And I'd be happy to share this with anybody,
Thank you very much.
because I have a PDF of it.
The city is funding a triple bottom line analysis already on this, right?
Yeah.
Does it make sense to be putting this together prior to the further learning or outcome of that?
Are you asking me? Or?
I don't know.
Can I just add something? During their presentation, they said that the AstroTurf would have to be recycled after so many years, and it would probably go in the landfill.
Okay, I think maybe I'll rephrase that. I don't think it makes sense to push a memorandum about this forward prior to the triple bottom line work being completed, because I think the content and the inputs in that will help focus the information for the council, which might be more efficient use of their time and the decision-making processes. I also noted, as I kind of read through it, it talks a lot about some community feedback. It was very one-sided, but I also saw the voter engagement on the bond measure that was passed for the sports complex as its own version of community feedback in support of year-round facilities. So I think that balance of the type of feedback the community has given about this facility and turf isn't factoring in to the discussion in this memo for me. And so those are just some weak spots that I see. I also noticed some comparisons to other communities that have similar rainfall to us, but like spread across 12 months, which is different than how we get it, which is in like a big wet season where students aren't out playing outside. So I don't know that that makes it a true comparative. Like if I think about Massachusetts or something, it's just always slightly drizzly. Whereas here we're like we've got our intense moments of Stupi. Both equal 4 inches on average or something like that, but. So I don't think it's quite there, and I think it's missing the information the city's funding to be gathered at the moment. That's important.
Just a process clarification, it sounds like you're coming pretty close to a suggestion to table till there's more information. Was that your intention?
That would be mine, but.
Lexi?
I'm sorry, Alexi.
Thank you. I just want to note, I think maybe some of us on this commission have a different view of what the purpose of the Eugene Sustainability Commission is. I don't think it's our job to do the triple bottom line on this. I think it's our job to consider specifically the sustainability aspects of something like artificial turf versus natural grass. There are other aspects, and those are in the city's triple bottom line. Playability over the year, hours of use, recyclability, that falls into ours. I guess the point I'm making is I think we should keep our vision and intent around specifically the sustainability aspects of this. We are not the decision makers. We are informing the decision makers about specifically sustainability topics. And so we've got a remit to learn about this, hear from folks like came and presented on this with the interim triple bottom line and some of the research that's been done already relevant to Golden Gardens, and then go out and learn about it, talk about it with each other, try to come up with some information, distill that down and provide the information back to the decision makers, that'd be council and potentially city staff. But I think it's okay for us to produce things that are limited in scope to sustainability aspects and do not cover every aspect of a topic. I think that vision, my vision of why the Sustainability Commission exists, it applies to this Golden Gardens turf, or rather all artificial turf decisions. It applies to the leaf blower piece. I think it applies in a couple areas where sometimes there's a topic we're not covering. Sometimes I'm okay with that because I want to keep our focus on, not that I wrote this part, so this is an outside perspective really for me, but I'm okay with keeping our focus on the sustainability related topics, even if sometimes that means it is not all of the not the entire triple bottom line may be covered, but my hope is that is covered by the people doing the triple bottom line analysis. And this memo that we can produce is another piece of information for the decision makers, so they can consider in parallel with some of that other content, like the triple bottom line analysis. That's where I will leave that.
Thank you. All right, we're running out of time and we haven't done staff updates yet. So Courtney was,
I'm not gonna debate that.
okay,
Just gonna leave it.
Laura?
I wanted to say that I think this is important to do before now, and we already did all this work also, because some of the things like council might, when they see the triple bottom line, say, we want artificial turf, but it has to be PFAS free. That's something other city councils have done. So I think they should know that other city councils who have done this and were promised that didn't actually get that result. So they should have that information going into the future so they can make an informed decision. Same with recycling. Some communities said, we only want turf if it can be recycled, and they were promised by the contractor it would be recycled, and then it wasn't. So that's why this timing is important, and I'm gonna call the vote, if that's okay, Jan, and see what happens. So motion to approve this particular proposal.
I'll say.
All in favor?
And we don't have a quorum anymore, do we?
Oh,
No.
Oh, we don't have a. We do because Alexi, sorry, we do because of Alexi.
To this meeting.
So wait,
No, I don't have.
clarify
any.
the motion.
Motion
Can you
to
state
approve,
the whole motion?
yeah, my motion is to approve the artificial turf one now and not table it till next year. That is my motion.
To approve it, sending to council now.
Yes.
Do we have the ability to provide a dissenting, or do we do that on our own?
Yeah, you just don't vote.
No, I meant.
No, she means a comment.
Contrary opinion can be attached to them. That's in the code.
So wait, who's all in favor? Are you opposed or in favor?
I'm opposed, I'm sorry.
You're opposed to the memo?
Okay,
I am as well.
so 4 in favor.
Can we?
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify, I may have missed something. So we have to clear the measure, sorry. We have to clear the motion that's on the table, right? And the motion that's on the table is, do we approve? My intent was to vote yes. Is that how that went? I may have missed some audio.
You,
Okay, thank you.
and 3 opposed, Tom, Courtney, and Devin. Okay,
No, I'm not opposed. I was in favor.
No, Devin.
Okay,
Devin.
the other.
Devin, did I say Devin?
No,
Okay, so it
I
passes.
just-
It
I just
passed.
Like,
Listen for me. So.
I know. I hear your name is my name in my head too, so I get it. All right, well, we're at
Okay.
time.
I don't have any updates. The June presentation is still TBD. I've got 2 potential topics and I'm waiting to like get confirmations from staff, so
Okay,
I'll email you when that's decided.
excellent, excellent.
I have one quick thing I need. We're currently scheduled to do tabling at and I sent it out belatedly. With Bethel Neighbors on the 31st, and I have a conflict. Because of a memorial service I'm called to. So we're only gonna be able to table with 1 or more volunteers. When we're willing and able to step up to do that event.
What day?
Bethel Neighbors on the 31st from 1 to 4. I can, or 12 to 4, I can assist with setup and breakdown. But I've got a memorial service to go to on that day, so. We need other folks who are willing to staff that. I'll schlep this stuff and go get it, et cetera. And loan the table, but we need someone to actually be there for the event itself. If other people aren't able to do it, we'll just have to decline, which is what was the situation last year too. It's noon to 4.
We could do a shift there. Did you say you have somebody else?
I can do the shift. I'm doing something until noon, so I could do a shift later.
Okay, I'll get back in touch with you two then. Thank you.
All right. So I want to thank everyone because there was a lot that we talked about tonight. I think everyone
Yeah.
did a good job.
Well,
Very-
fill out that piece, I just want to invite people to think about other events. I mean, my term is about to be done, and I said I'd try to schedule things through the summer, particularly neighborhood events, and had a conversation with a board member in your neighborhood and folks in my neighborhood about whether or not there are people who are willing and able to do those neighborhood events. Well, please think about if you're, so.
Yeah, for sure. If you just send me the dates, I'm just not available on the 31st, unfortunately, but I
Yeah.
like those tabling events and
Okay.
want to be involved with that. For sure. All right, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Find out who the commissioners are.
Right?
Daniel, will you? email
Thank you
us?
all.
Thank you, Alexi.
Will you?
Bye,
email us
folks.
that